good morning. My name is Gillian Hammer and I am the Group Chief Marketing Officer of Databank. With me today is Kojo Addae-Mensah, who is the Group CEO of Databank. For those of you who do not know Kojo, allow me to introduce him briefly. He has over 20 years of banking experience, both commercial and investment banking. And he actually started his work life at Databank in 1998. From there, he moved to Standard Chartered, Barclays, and then GCB before returning to Databank in 2014. So he has gone quite some ways around and is very well experienced. Outside of work, he has three passions, and he always likes to say it in this order as well. His son, and then football, Liverpool specifically, and then education. So from an education standpoint, he is a director of the Changing Lives Endowment Fund, which has actually been helping support bright and needy children since 2008, if I recall, or 2007, thereabouts. And then in 2017, he actually launched out on a personal level a similar project in his hometown of Addae-Mensah to help JHS students. So, Kojo, I'm very delighted to have you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your time. Today, we are here to discuss a topic that is near and dear to many people's hearts, and that's education. And we'll be looking at it from the standpoint of the challenges accessing quality education, how we can position our children to compete both locally and internationally, and then finally what Databank is doing to help Ghanaians secure quality education. So, Kojo, we'll get started. My first question is, let's talk about, we hear the term quality education being thrown around quite often, and I would like to get your definition of it. What does it mean to you, and how accessible is it?
Okay, so you're quite right. We hear a lot of quality education in Ghana, but I realize that most of the time people tend to think at the terminal level, that is at the tertiary level, but for me it's a whole different thing. Quality education for me is the whole spectrum, right, from primary through secondary and then to the tertiary. And by tertiary, I'll mean both the HND and the first degree level. But more importantly for me is, after you've gone through this whole spectrum and you come out, are you equipped? Do you have the right skill set to be able to succeed in life and to meet the challenges of life, or especially working life? So for me, if you come out after you've gone through that whole cycle and you do not have the required skills to be able to meet the challenges of life and compete locally and compete internationally, then you haven't gone through quality education.
But in your mind, is it something that is accessible? It's necessary, it's what will allow you to compete, but is it accessible to every Ghanaian?
So I will take your question from the public schools system. I mean, okay. In Ghana, I think we are running several streams. If you look at the whole educational spectrum, we've got the public stream and we've got a private stream. But I think your question is very relevant for the public sector. So at the primary level, honestly speaking, I don't think we have it. It's really, really poor. And then we have the secondary level, where for me it's also again divided into two groups. So our public schools, our public secondary schools, the top ones, you tend to realize that they have very strong alumni associations. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, at that level we normally say old boys and old girls associations or old students associations for the mixed schools. And you realize that where you have a very vibrant alumni association, the quality of education there at that point is much, much better than for the schools that don't have very strong alumni associations. So for example, I'm not going to advertise any schools here, but for example, for our schools, I mean, for the last, I don't know how many years, laboratory equipment has been done by the old boys, dormitories, classroom renovation, even supply of water, basic necessities like water. We supply tractors so that the grass can be cut so that it's not overweed. Basic things, and that's all supports the kind of education that they get. But then when you go down the line and you get to the secondary schools where they don't have very vibrant old students' associations and they have to rely completely on the public system, it's terrible. I mean, there's literally nothing equipping the students there to come out or to go to the next level with the kind of skill set they require. Then at the tertiary level, I think it's much, much better at the tertiary level. But even then, and I'm sure during the interview I'll say that again, even then you tend to realize that it is very skewed towards the liberal arts. The sciences don't have what it takes to at the public school.
Because there are not many science-based universities.
At all. But there used to be. I mean, we used to have, you know, Tech is a public university and it was specifically built for the sciences. But what are we seeing today in Tech? I mean, you see the numbers and you start asking yourself if it's really a science-based tertiary institution.
And if I recall, recently you were giving a speech at the graduation for one of the polytechnics, now turned technical universities. And in that speech, you mentioned the fact that that university was graduating more business students than actual science students.
And that was fact. And this is a technical university. So you would expect that there will be more students graduating with technical degrees and technical higher national diplomas than business and liberal arts. But it's flipped. And the question is why? But you know why? It's because they are not even getting the raw material coming from the secondary level. Because at the secondary level as well, the situation has changed. It's more liberal arts and business studies than the sciences. The resources are just not there. My school was tagged a science school when I was in secondary school. And we had 2 streams of science and just 1 stream of business. Today, if you go into my school, they have 3 streams of business, 1 stream of science. It's gone reverse. So where are we training our scientists?
So that brings me to a recent article in the Daily Graphic. And the title of the article was Secondary Education Reforms in Ghana, the case for 4-year SHS with a first-year generalist curriculum. And I want to get your thoughts. I'll read a brief portion of the article and then I would love to get your thoughts on it. So the point that the article was making was that the current 3-year program that we are in is insufficient or inadequate in terms of allowing children to master or students to master what they're learning, because really it's 2.5 years of academic work, and then the rest of time, at the beginning it's them getting introduced and oriented into the school, and then at the end it's exams. So the writer of the article was proposing that SHS students would rather benefit more from a 4-year SHS and then a 1-year or a first-year generalist program that exposes them to all the different subjects that there are, so they get an idea of what to do. And then the last thing he said is that there should also be, or this should be supported by counseling at the JHS level. I would love to hear your thoughts on it.
That's a good one. This is a debate that I am well versed in, and I've had the privilege of reading research work that my own dad did around this specific topic. Unfortunately in Ghana, the 3-year, 4-year thing has, again, as usual, been thrown into an MPP-NDC debate where one side wants to do it 4 years, the other. But that for me, and this is now my personal view, is not the issue at all. Whether 3-year or 4-year, I think we've just gotten our secondary education wrong.
Explain.
So back in our time, and maybe people will think it's just me going old school, we get into secondary school at age 12 or at best at age 13. Our next terminal exam is at age 17, which is the O level. So you have time to get a proper rounded education. All this thing about counseling and a generalist year and all, by the time you go through your 5-year cycle, you would have gone through all that. You would have discovered yourself as a human being. There will be other curricular activities that you will have time to do during that 5-year period. I discovered my love for football, well, maybe before that, but you hone in all those skills. People learn how to play music. People learn all sorts of things. You come out extremely rounded. you do an exam that is internationally recognized across the world, and you can compete internationally. Today, what we've done is we've extended the first terminal at age, what, JSS is at age 14, 15.
Right.
And by the time you're going into secondary school, then the problem comes. Whether it's 3 or 4 years, it's never going to be enough time to be able to discover yourself. Everybody is trying to get their school on the top of the list. So they're just cramming you with the exam.
So from the moment you start?
From the moment you walk into any secondary school, you are being prepared for that exam. And there's no time for anything else. There's no time, to even, we used to do farming. You know, it may not be an exam thing, but then I learned how to make beds, I learned how to plant tomatoes. You know, you learn all sorts of things that will help you in the future. So yeah, the article, I can understand where he's coming from, but from the research I have read and from the experiences I have seen, I would love for Ghana to just go back to what pertains even here in the UK, where they get a secondary education that is a minimum of 5 years. Then it gives them time to prepare and become rounded international citizens. Right now, I don't know how many countries accept our SHS certificate even. But back in the day, I could have walked with my O-level certificate to any school in the UK, provided I did well. It's just that I bombed.
So, okay, let's talk technology.
Yeah.
Now, again, I'm drawing from a number of recent articles, but there was another one that mentioned, it talks about the ICT syllabus being revised at the BEC level, and that the Ministry of Communication and the Ministry of Education were now planning to partner to allow students to learn coding and programming. Now I'm going to compare that to a story that went viral in March of this year about a teacher, a computer teacher who was teaching computers on the blackboards for students. And I remember Microsoft, they found out about him and they did an interview with him. And from his standpoint, what he was saying is he just wanted to do the best for his students. So he had no computer to show them, so he had to draw everything on the blackboard. And he drew monitors, system units, keyboards, the mouse, drawing toolbar. Thank God he could even draw to begin with.
Exactly.
But, you know, and from his standpoint, he says, well, the students were okay with it. But my question is, and I'll ask you the question in 2 parts. First part is perhaps a bit controversial, but I'm thinking if we don't have computers in the classroom, should we be focused on coding at this point?
Exactly. You know, Juliet, in my line of charity work, that's where I get so upset with the politicians. Because this is, for me, political talk. If you get into the publics, and I'm talking public school, I'm not talking private, public sector school, they don't even have the chairs and tables to sit on, basic tools. How on earth, or who is even going to teach that coding? How many coding teachers do we have in the public sector? There are no computers even. You know, even when we were in the university, right, our computer science students, it was a big challenge. They were learning coding on the board and could not convert it practically onto a computer. They had to then go, those days, NCR, Wang, they had computers there. So our students will be gathered 1 week, they go into NCR and try and apply the theory they've learned. I mean, and you're talking to, they're still using chalk. In today's Ghana, we still use chalk in our public system. When in Europe and in the US and in Singapore, where our kids should be competing, the teacher is facing the board. The teacher doesn't face the students. That's where education has reached. And why is that? Because the teacher is on the computer and is projecting. So the teacher doesn't have to face the students. He or she faces the board.
So you think we're a bit ahead of our time?
This thing about let's change the curriculum syllabus, We need basic resources in our public sector schools.
So Kojo, practically speaking then, and you've gotten quite worked up.
Yes, I get worked up. Because
period of
you know,
time.
I visit public schools a lot, especially through the work I do, and not my work that feeds me, but work I do for the community. And you can weep if you are not strong, and you ask yourself, what chance do these kids have? What chance?
So
to
that
make it
brings
in
me to my next question then, which is, what can we, both the government and individuals, do then to help our children prepare better from a technology standpoint?
You know, let me just give a scenario. So you're a parent, and unfortunately you find yourself in a deprived environment. So your child has to go to school, let's say Abetifi. Let me use my own hometown, Abetifi, so that nobody feels insulted or anything like that. But you've been posted to Abetifi as a civil servant. You don't have a choice, and if you want your kids to stay with you, you don't have a choice but to put them in there. A lot of the time, we say we do not have money. But I mean, that's why somebody will ask, well, why are we talking about this? But if you start putting your mind to it, and you start investing something small every month, consistently and religiously, you, the parent, ignore what, we are in this mode of, is the government's role. It's not the government, it's your child. You, the parent, can buy a computer for your kid, if for nothing at all, to overcome the fear of what a computer is. Because sometimes when you get to my hometown, the computer is there and it's covered.
Because they don't know how to use it.
Well, they will tell you because of dust, but I wonder if it's ever opened. But if you're using it, where's the dust coming from? So you, the parent, if you have invested something small, after a year, you can buy one computer. It's a start. I'm talking about technology here. You can buy a phone, a smartphone, where they can start downloading and having access. Kids don't have any hindrances.
Yes.
They will just explore, and you'll never know what talent that kid has. Ignore what environment they are in. Don't say the kid is in a school that doesn't have a chair, that doesn't have a computer, that doesn't have a this and that. Excuses we can give, but you can talk to professionals who will help you invest some money to get the ability to give your child a chance.
So there are some who believe that a whole new core of subjects also needs to be introduced. So subjects, it's more skill-based subjects that would equip students in areas of problem solving, creative thinking, and collaboration. Is this something that is happening in our schools? You don't need a computer for this. So how well is this happening?
As far as I'm concerned, in the public sector, it's not happening. We are still steeped in our very old curricula and syllabuses. When I talk to some of the experts, they tell me there's nothing wrong with our syllabus is okay, it's competitive enough. But when you go into the private stream, you find them teaching some of these subjects or these topics, because that is what is needed in today's world for them to be able to survive. That's why I'm saying the quality of education, especially at the primary level, is not good. It's extremely poor. But they are not teaching that. They are reviewing the curricula and thinking of coding. They are not reviewing the curricula and thinking of what life skills the kids will need to be able to think for themselves. It's not about what the teacher is telling me. It's about what I think, and I will challenge it, and I will question it, and I will be trying to understand why something has to be done like this. Not the teacher said this, so it's gospel.
For step one, that means teachers even have to allow students to ask questions.
Yes.
Which in a lot of cases doesn't seem to happen.
Not in the public schools.
So, coming back to parents, because I mean, you can always sit and wait for the schools to fix it or the government to fix it. But as you said, as parents, we need to also take some responsibility.
The responsibility,
that's fine. So even at the skills-based level, problem solving. So I'm a parent. Advise me, how can I help build my child with creative thinking, problem solving? Like, what can I do practically?
You see, in a supposed traditional setting, children are not supposed to question their parents. And I'm telling parents today that it doesn't mean the child disrespects you if the child is challenging something you are telling him or her. It means you're allowing the child to get into that mode of creative thinking, of collaboration, and we should have, because they have so much going on around them, you should allow them to be able to challenge you. Indeed, I'll give an example. You the parent, you would say to the child, you're not supposed to sweep after 6 p.m. The question is why? Why are you not supposed to? And then you say, take it like that. From my ancestors, they said you are not supposed to sweep after 6 p.m. But you know, the real reason was back in the day, we were not using all these fluorescent lights and all, we're just using candles and lanterns, and you wouldn't be able to see whether you swept some jewelry.
Okay.
That's the whole reasoning behind it.
Or money.
Or money or something. But it was just an example I'm giving. So before you tell a child something, make sure that you can also explain it to the child scientifically, logically, and then you don't shut the kids down. We need to allow them to express themselves. It doesn't mean they disrespect you.
You know, that reminds me of a book that I read, Malcolm Gladwell. One of the things in one of his books, I think it was Outliers, but he mentioned the fact that the difference between children from the wealthier families or the more affluent families and the other families was that parents allowed those children to ask. So he even gave an example of, you know, a parent taking their child to the doctor and encouraging the child to ask. Question the doctor. When the doctor says you have a cold or something, ask why. If the doctor is giving you medication, ask why. So it's something that I think we need. Now, at the tertiary level, over the last 10 to 20 years, we've seen a number of private universities coming up. We've also seen a number of the polytechnics lobbying to become technical universities in an effort to try and fill what I think is some of the gaps in the liberal arts public universities. And I want to know whether you think that the new crop of universities that are coming up are actually filling that gap.
You know, the problem, well, I don't know if it's a problem, but it's their business, and I won't question them for that. But the problem I have with the proliferation of private universities is that I don't see any of them going to the sciences. No country can develop without the sciences. All these 90% of the universities, or 95% of the universities, are just offering business and liberal arts. That's all we are flooding our markets with. And you know, hundreds of, I think it's about over 400,000 graduates come out of universities in Ghana every year. 95% of those are in liberal arts and business. So obviously there will be no jobs for them. But imagine if it was a good balance between the sciences, and we had several engineers coming out, we had several doctors coming out, we had several biochemists coming out, nuclear physicists and all that. There will be things to do. You get what?
Would there really be things to do?
Will
Are
be
there companies to receive them?
They could create companies they could be scientific entrepreneurs. There are scientific entrepreneurs. Microsoft was a scientific, Bill Gates was a scientific entrepreneur. So I don't see why as a country we are not pushing the sciences. I mean, I think it's only Ashesi, I stand corrected, but Ashesi is the only one I've seen trying to develop a school of engineering. And I pray and hope that that happens pretty soon. But otherwise, most of the private universities, liberal arts and business. So I'm not happy with their proliferation. I would wish we would have private schools that are focusing on science. I think there's there are two private medical schools. Okay. So that is also a good one. But I'm talking about science. You know, if you have to construct a bridge, you need scientists to do that, not me.
Well, Kojo, I would ask you, I mean, if I think of one of these polytechnics moving to technical universities, and in that case, the university is still focused largely on business programs because it doesn't have the
feet.
resources either.
Yeah.
So let's say that it gets an influx of science students. Is it set up to really bring them in and give them, does it have the resources?
So I come back to your question about quality education. So that quality education should be, for science, it should be focusing from primary through secondary to tertiary. At all stages, there should be laboratories, there should be specimens, there should be reagents, there should be test tubes, and all those things should be there. So it is a whole spectrum. We cannot focus on only one level and leave the other. You can't do it that way. You have to do it right through to the end. When I was in primary school, we had a laboratory in primary school, where we could go and see specimens. We could see chameleons. That was the first time I could see a chameleon changing colors. I remember
I'm sure
it.
I've seen one.
No, I remember it in class 6 with Mr. Donko. I mean, yeah. So we need a holistic approach to providing quality education. And I'm saying again, parents shouldn't just leave it to some government system or something. They must prepare themselves.
So, for you, one of the things that you always say anytime you go out and speak at different events is that you are very proudly Ghanaian, in that you've been born here, raised here, schooled here, on and on and on, and now you are in the seat of a CEO of one of the largest investment banks. But all the answers that you've provided on the schooling system don't seem to be very positive about the current schooling system. So I'm wondering whether the children that are coming up now have the same chance at succeeding and reaching where you did.
Those in the private stream, yes, I'm sure there are several very good private school streams that will succeed. But honestly, I will be brutally frank. If I go to the school my dad went in, Takwa Methodist, and I look at those kids there, none of them stand a chance of ever becoming a vice chancellor. That is being brutally frank. It just won't happen. Those you find doing well, who have gone through a public secondary school and a public tertiary school, would not have gone through a public primary school.
So then the challenge is the foundation from the early
that
stages.
is non-existent in the public school system. The foundation is just non-existent. I mean, let's just go to even in urban schools today. Right here next door to us, in class 2, there are 60, almost 65 kids in there with one teacher who is overwhelmed. It's not her fault. What foundation are those kids going to have to be able to qualify into a top 10 public secondary school? Get into the top 10 public secondary schools, and I can assure you, almost all of them have gone through a private primary school to get to where they are. And those people have some chance. But even to compete internationally will be a challenge. That's my view.
Now, you have, as you had said earlier, over 400,000 students that graduate from the various tertiary institutions in Ghana every year. And they're all flooding the workforce. My question to you here is, what are employers looking out for? So from these graduates, I mean, they're going through school, but I want to know when they come out, what are the things that are most important to you as an employer?
Julian, it's really the simple things. And it's a pity that the kids think that getting a first class gets me a job. Yeah, getting a first class is good. I haven't said don't get a first class, but while you're at it, you should get the basics. I mean, computer skills. I mean, Microsoft Word is basic Word. And you look up on the screen, one font size is that way, the other font size is that way, the color matching is something else. They haven't even researched the company they are going into. They don't understand what the company does. there's no drive in them, there's no passion in them. They can't even string one sentence without a grammatical error. These are basic things I'll require before I even equip you with what you want or what you need when you walk in.
So are you finding graduates coming with that?
Not graduates coming from the public system, unfortunately. Most of the time, they will be coming from very good private universities. If they are or from abroad, unfortunately. If they're coming from a public school, if you delve deeper, you'll find out that there's something about parenting there. And that's why I come back to the parents. You'll find out that the parents have had extra interest in their education. Their parents have invested more than the system would invest in them. And what did the parent do? The parents must have invested part of their money while the kid was growing up and invested in the child's education.
So now that brings me to talk about investing and education. And I just spend a little bit of time on the topic of financing education. Recently, Databank put out an article on the cost of a four-year business degree in a number of universities, both local and international. And I'll share some of the costs with you to give you the context for my question. So, for example, we looked at, and this excludes accommodation, food, and transportation. But University of Ghana, for example, four-year business degree for a regular student costs roughly $5,500 for 4 years. Central University was around $17,000. Ashesi, $142,000. We picked a university in the UK, Warwick University. That was in CDs, 579,000, almost 600,000 CDs for a four-year degree.
Wow.
Then we went to the US and picked also a university from the US. So, and we didn't go for the top universities. We picked
No Harvard, no Yale.
No, we excluded those. And we picked Brown University. And when you convert it to CDs, for a four-year degree, it was just over 1 million CDs. Now, what advice would you give to parents on preparing for school fees? So, should they be thinking, okay, just take a loan when the time comes?
No.
Should they be saving? What should they do? When should they do it? I've asked 4 questions.
A loan is the last thing you want to do. A loan is the last thing you want to do. If you find yourself considering going for a loan to educate your child, then it means you didn't prepare. It means you've not been wise.
So when should you start preparing?
The moment you marry. Because when you marry, you're expecting to have a child. And when you have a child, you're expecting to educate the child. And when you're educating the child, you're expecting to give the child the best education. I'm not sure you are marrying just to be there. And I'm not sure you are giving birth to a child who will just not go to a good school. So the moment you marry, you agree that every month you're going to put a certain amount of money into an investment account, preferably at Databank, for the foreseeable future, and you're not touching it until that child is ready to go to Warwick, or preferably Yale or Harvard or Howard, or one of those top.
So what about if they go to just
University of Ghana?
But University of Ghana.
It's fine. That's why when I'm very proud of it. I'm extremely proud to have gone to the Ghana, and I'm proud of what I do for them as well. But it doesn't take much. So if you have, the more time you have, the less you would require to put aside. And if you sit down and you think about how much you spend, I mean, I know I'm veering there, but you spend on your hair, on your shoes, on makeup, on pizza, on, all sorts of things. It will shock you. So
what about the bottle of beer?
Okay,
for
the beer, for the boys outing that doesn't need to happen.
Thank you.
For the extra, year at the golf course or something like that. Okay, but the longer you have, the easier it is. So Legon, 5,500. I think I've seen that paper somewhere before. But if you have an 18-year time frame at an average return of 15%, all you need is 6 CDs. 6 CDs. If you are consistent with that 6 CDs, 15% average, I haven't factored in inflation. Once inflation comes in, that 6 CDs will move. It's the principle, is what I'm trying to say. That Ashesi 142, all you need is 146 CDs. That
over 18 years.
Over 18 years at a return of 15%. That Brown University you're talking about, 1,000 CDs. I mean, just think about it. What 6 CDs a month can become in 18 years' time. But it's not impossible to give your child quality education if you take responsibility for it yourself. And that is the message I have today, honestly, that parents must take the responsibility themselves and not blame it on some government system, and not blame it on the country, and not blame it on our color. But it is up to them and they can do it. So if you wait till your child is now 15 years and you realize that, oh, this child is brilliant, I need to do something, it's not too late. But now that 6 CDs is becoming something like 65 CDs. See the difference? Just what 13 years makes. And a lot of us complain by saying, oh, but the toddler school fees is high already, and this is high already. Yeah, you just have to plan. It's all about planning, and you decide what it is that you have to. I mean, if you are putting 6 CDs aside of your income, and say your income is even 1,500 CDs, I mean, 6 CDs really, it's not that much.
Yes.
Well, whereas then you take a bigger chunk to pay the immediate school fees. But I mean, that's why we have some beautiful products to offer.
Okay, tell us a bit about what Databank specifically is doing to help Ghanaians invest towards education.
I think I would pride myself in saying we have the broadest range of products in the investment banking industry. I'm not sure anybody has the kind of range that we have. So all our products can help you achieve whatever goal. There's one product definitely we will have that will help you achieve whatever goal it is that you want to attain. But specifically for education, so we have EduFund, all right? And EduFund, we designed it such that we would have it in 2 tiers.
Okay.
So just as I was trying to explain, we recognize the fact that the tertiary level is probably the most expensive. So we have, and then the beginning is what is somewhat less expensive. So the first tier is the short term one. That's what maybe after every term you need to come and tap into to meet the term fees. But once you pay the term fees and you hit it down, please, the key is you don't stop. If it's 50 CDs you're putting in, you start the 50 CDs again. I mean, your best bet is to do a direct debit, then every month is going. Then we have the second tier, which is a longer term one, which is really designed and targeted at that tertiary education. And it's a bit more risky. We take a bit more risk there, but it's professionally taken. The beauty of it again is that it has an embedded insurance policy in there.
Both tiers or?
No, for tier 2.
Okay.
For tier 2. Tier 2 is where we have the insurance policy embedded, because it is longer term, and over that period, there's a higher chance that something negative, unfortunate, could happen to you, like permanent disability, etc., etc. So then, you do not, your child doesn't have the misfortune of, because mom or dad became incapacitated, they don't have the chance of accessing quality education. It's a beautiful product. I would recommend it to every parent. I recommend it to even not spouses, but those who are even thinking of getting married. They better start it now. Not jointly. If you are dating, not jointly, but you can all do it individually. And when you come together, you put your forces together and you arrive. So I would strongly recommend EduFund for anybody watching us today. targeted education. But our other products are also available. I mean, for all sorts of things, you can. I mean, we see people who have invested in EPAC who are buying houses. People who are retiring comfortably with B Fund. We have people who are, really relaxing with ARC Fund, and those who are dealing with unforeseen emergencies with M Fund. I mean, we see it all the time. This is very beautiful.
Well, Kojo, thank you very much. I would ask if you have any final words before
Well,
we close out.
I guess I would like, before parents, general public, I mean, I would like to talk to those who always ask, I have 5,000 cedis at the end of 1 month, what am I going to get? That issue is what is getting people bend their fingers. People are just chasing rates. Investing is not about chasing rates. Investing is about being wise, being patient, and asking the right questions. Before you take your money anywhere, ask the right questions. Who are behind the company? What is their governance strategy? You better start investing today.
Thank you. Very well said. I thank you for your time. I thank everyone who has taken the time to listen as well. And we invite you to visit Databank's website to see this video and just access all the other resources that we have available to help you. So thank you once again and have a wonderful day.